What if I told you the decline of the world's biggest football club started with a racehorse, a bitter falling out, and a power struggle that threw open the doors for one of the most hated takeovers in sports history? This is a story of how a multi-million-pound horse blew up a friendship between Sir Alex Ferguson and Manchester United's biggest shareholders, an epic feud that created a power vacuum that allowed the Glazer family to seize control, plunging the world's most famous club into an era of debt, protests, and decay. The turn of the millennium was Manchester United's time. Under the legendary Sir Alex Ferguson, Old Trafford was a fortress, and the trophy cabinet was bursting. The 1999 Treble, winning the Premier League, FA Cup, and UEFA Champions League, was a feat that cemented their place in football history. Financially, the club was rock solid. As a publicly listed company, thousands of shareholders owned it, and more importantly, it was completely debt-free. It was the biggest, richest club on the planet. Sir Alex Ferguson wasn't just the manager, he was the architect of it all. His word was law. He had built a monster, and it seemed like nothing could stop it. But away from the roar of Old Trafford, a new passion was consuming Ferguson, a passion for horse racing. Sir Alex Ferguson's love for the sport of kings was no secret. This hobby brought him into the elite world of horse racing, where he struck up a powerful friendship with two of Ireland's most successful businessmen, John Magnier and J.P. McManus. Magnier was the boss of the world-famous Coolmore stud, the biggest and most prestigious thoroughbred breeding operation on the planet. Together with McManus, they were titans of industry who also happened to be huge Manchester United fans. Their shared love for football and horses made them fast friends. Soon, that friendship turned into a business partnership. Through their investment firm, Cubic Expression, Magnier and McManus started buying up Manchester United shares, eventually becoming the club's largest single shareholders with a stake of 28.7%. And then came the horse. A stunning colt named Rock of Gibraltar, and he wasn't just good, he was a phenomenon. In 2002, Rock of Gibraltar did the unthinkable, winning 7 Group 1 races in a row, the highest level in racing. His success was electrifying, and his value went through the roof. When he retired to stud, Rock of Gibraltar was estimated to be worth a massive 40 to 50 million pounds, with his breeding rights promising a river of gold for his owners. This is where the story takes a dark turn. Sir Alex Ferguson was convinced he was one of those owners. He claimed he'd been gifted a 50% stake in the horse in a casual verbal agreement with his friend John Magnier. In his mind, he didn't just have a horse racing in his honor. He believed half of that multi-million-pound empire was his. It was a gentleman's agreement, but in the cutthroat world of high finance, a gentleman's agreement isn't worth the paper it's not written on. When Rock of Gibraltar hung up his racing shoes to start his very lucrative career as a stallion, Sir Alex Ferguson expected his cut of the massive profits. He went to John Magnier looking to cash in on what he believed was his 50% ownership of the stud rights, but Magnier had a very different memory of their deal. He argued that Ferguson was only ever entitled to a slice of the horse's prize money, not the far more valuable breeding rights. Feeling double-crossed, Ferguson took the fight public. In 2003, he filed a lawsuit in the Irish High Court to claim his half of Rock of Gibraltar. This one move turned a private spat into a public war. By suing Magnier, Ferguson wasn't just going after a former friend. He was taking on Manchester United's largest and most powerful shareholder. The blowback was immediate and vicious. Magnier and McManus were not men you wanted to cross. They didn't just fight back in court, they hit Ferguson where it hurt most, the Manchester United boardroom. In early 2004, they launched a stunning counterattack by sending a list of 99 questions to the club's board. It was a full-blown audit of the club's finances, digging into everything from transfer deals and agent fees to Ferguson's authority. The feud ripped the club apart. Even Ferguson's own captain, Roy Keane, saw the writing on the wall. In his autobiography, Keane said he warned Ferguson against the lawsuit, telling him, "You are not going to win this," and bluntly adding that Ferguson didn't even own the bloody thing. Keane's words were spot on. The legal war was creating a toxic mess, dividing the club and shaking its very foundations. The case was eventually settled out of court. Ferguson reportedly got a one-time payment of around £2.5 million, a fraction of the fortune he was chasing, and a non-disclosure agreement was signed to bury the details for good. Years later, in his autobiography, Ferguson would brush it all off as a simple misunderstanding. But the damage was done. The trust between the manager and the club's biggest shareholders was shattered forever. For Magnier and McManus, their position at the club now felt impossible. They wanted out, and across the Atlantic, a predator was circling, waiting for his chance. The brutal war over Rock of Gibraltar left a gaping wound in Manchester United's ownership. The powerful Irish duo, once Ferguson's allies and protectors of the club's stability, were now fed up and ready to sell. This created a dangerous power vacuum, and into that void stepped an American businessman named Malcolm Glazer. Glazer, who owned the NFL's Tampa Bay Buccaneers, had been quietly buying up Manchester United shares since March 2003, before the lawsuit became public knowledge. He saw what others did, a global brand with enormous untapped commercial potential. While the boardroom drama was playing out, Glazer was steadily increasing his stake, going from under 3% to nearly 30% by late 2004. He was getting himself in position, just waiting for the right moment. The Ferguson Magnier feud handed it to him on a silver platter. In May 2005, the moment came. Glazer made his move and offered to buy the entire 28.7% stake owned by Magnier and McManus's company, Cubic Expression. Desperate to wash their hands of the club and the whole ugly affair, the Irishman accepted. That single transaction was the kill shot for Manchester United as a publicly owned, debt-free club. With those shares, Glazer's holding rocketed past the 50% mark, triggering a mandatory takeover of the entire company. The dominoes fell with terrifying speed. Within weeks, Glazer had snapped up over 98% of the shares, completing his hostile takeover. But this was no normal business deal. Glazer had financed his roughly £800 million takeover with something called a leveraged buyout. In simple terms, he borrowed most of the money to buy the club, and then secured those massive loans against the club itself. Manchester United, a club that had been proudly debt-free, was suddenly drowning in over £525 million of debt overnight. The club's own assets were now collateral for the loans used to buy it. The fan reaction was pure horror and outrage. Supporter groups like Shareholders United had fought tooth and nail to stop the takeover, warning that the club would be treated like a cash cow to pay off the massive debts. Protests exploded. The Green and Gold campaign was born, with fans wearing the colors of the club's original name, Newton Heath, to protest the new owners. Some fans were so disgusted they broke away to form their own club, FC United of Manchester, a symbol of their belief that the soul of their club had been stolen. The entire financial model was turned upside down. Before, profits were put back into the team in the stadium. Now, a massive chunk of the club's revenue was siphoned off to pay interest and fees on the debt the Glazers themselves had dumped on the club. While rivals built futuristic stadiums and training grounds, Old Trafford, the theater of dreams, started to literally fall apart. Reports of a leaky roof and crumbling concrete became a running joke, an embarrassing symbol of neglect. On the field, Sir Alex Ferguson worked miracles in his final years, somehow managing to paper over the cracks and deliver more Premier League titles and another Champions League. But when he retired in 2013, the whole thing came crashing down. Without his genius holding it all together, the club stumbled into a long and painful decline. The transition was a mess. Managers were hired and fired, and a string of overpriced, mismatched signings failed to bring the glory days back. While the club's commercial team kept making money hand over fist, the on-field performance nosedived. The club hasn't won a Premier League title since Ferguson left. Fans have had to watch in agony as their debt-ridden club struggles to keep up, all while the owners continue to cash in. The fear that United would become a cash cow had, for many, become a grim reality. The fallout from the Rock of Gibraltar fight didn't just lead to a new owner, it fundamentally changed the club's DNA, shifting its focus from winning trophies to making profits. So did a multi-million-pound horse really destroy Manchester United? The story isn't quite that simple, but you can't deny its role as the catalyst. The nasty dispute between Sir Alex Ferguson and John Magnier destroyed the stability at the top of the club. It created a power vacuum and an exit door that Malcolm Glazer charged through with ruthless timing. While Glazer was already buying shares, the Irishman deciding to sell their massive block was the moment the floodgates opened. Without the Rock of Gibraltar affair, it's very likely Magnier and McManus would have stayed put, acting as a powerful shield against any hostile takeover. The question that still hangs over Old Trafford nearly 2 decades later is whether Manchester United can ever truly escape the shadow of that deal. Can the damage that all started with a horse ever really be undone? If you like the story, subscribe to the channel.